welcome to you.
Adam?
So is all this a ruse, asking for the impossible to string it along for another 2 weeks and then we get no deal Brexit?
Well, no, because there is one thing that your correspondent failed to say, and I think it's important. Yesterday was published an agreement between those in my party who, like Nicky Morgan, who are very strong Remainers, etc.
This is the so-called Malthouse Compromise.
Well, it is, and our lot as well. And what we've actually came together to see is there a way through where both sides recognise some of the realities and also recognise there has to be some compromise. And the compromisers say, look, we want to go back, we want to get a deal, we recognise the backstop doesn't work for the UK, for Northern Ireland, it needs to be changed. If the EU doesn't want to do that, refuses point blank to engage, I don't think they will, by the way, I think they will engage, then we recognise that any process towards WTO or a future trade deal without that needs time. So there will be an implementation period, much like there would be.
But
so
on the other hand,
all of that is an agreement between two sides, say there is a way through. So it's not Brexiteers threatening the government. It's actually the Conservative Party saying we recognise the need for compromise.
However, as I understand it, if, as you say, the European Union does engage, then all that falls by the wayside. It's simply a question of backing the withdrawal deal as negotiated.
Well, you know, like I say, if the EU engages, and I believe they will, by the way, because I went over to Barnier with a proposal which does achieve what the Irish quite legitimately want, which is no hard borders, no border checks, no facilities at borders. They want to be able to do the business between the two sides. Remember, Ireland, by the way, is not in Schengen, so this idea of passport controls is never an issue because there are passport controls at Dublin for people coming in. It's not a member of Schengen. That makes it a bit easier.
And there is also, irrespective of EU membership, freedom of movement for people on the island of Ireland.
Yes, but there was always, and Ireland has always had British citizen rights in the UK and vice versa. We've always had this common sense that no matter that we are two different countries, our citizens are treated exactly the same for welfare, for benefits, for jobs and everything else. And that is an established fact. That won't change. So there is a proposal which I believe does get us a long way towards this, which is a protocol on an advanced customs and trade position, which we went to see Monsieur Barnier about with his team. We spent 2 hours with them. They asked us to write the protocol for them. We did. We gave it to them. The government then signed up in the meantime to this backstop. But it's still there, and I believe it's the basis, because they said so, it makes sense. It's the basis for how to get round this problem.
But this is really the key question. Bearing in mind what the European Union said about not reopening the withdrawal agreement itself, does what you're saying actually require a reopening of the withdrawal agreement?
Well, I wouldn't take everybody at face value right now. Of course, the EU about to go into negotiation with the British government, I would be astonished if they would turn around and say, I tell you what, no problems, let's get to it and we'll open anything you want. They're not going to say that. They've also got to report back to the 27. There's a lot of unease in the 27.
No, but what I'm asking really is Robert Buckland, for example, who's been part of these talks that you were referring to earlier, he said to me that he felt this could be done with a legally binding codicil and, if you like, preserve the dignity of the European Union, who would be able to say, well, the withdrawal agreement has not been reopened. Would that be enough?
Well, there are lots of different ways of looking at it. She said legally binding, and she is going to get them to open up the backstop to have a look at it. Now, here's the key. I agree. In any negotiation or agreement, you always need to allow the other side to save face in any change. I am not against a backstop. Actually, I'm in favour of a backstop. I think it's wholly reasonable for the Irish to have an absolute specific...
Indefinitely?
Yes, and this is the difference. I'm not necessarily in favour of time limits for one reason. I think that is asking them to swallow too much. What I'm in favour of is this protocol process, because it is not time limited. It means if we don't arrive at a trade deal in time, there is no sense that suddenly we will stop this. They're allowed to say, this process that we agree between us will carry on. And I think that's a more reasonable approach. Now, it's up to the Prime Minister how she does it. But my sense with the European Union, when I sat down and talked to them, is practicalities they understand. They said to us, actually, this is what the British asked for. So what we want is a trade deal, and let's get there as quickly as
I understand it, one way of getting rid of the backstop would be simply to say we're going to stay in the customs union. Would that be acceptable?
Well, you can, but I don't think that will get through Parliament. We've made it clear, and the Parliament has actually said there's no majority for staying in the customs union. The Prime Minister herself said she's not going to do it. The key thing here is, how do you get through this with minimal change, maximum impact? And my sense about this is I genuinely believe, by the way, that when you strip away all the caggage and the statements from MEPs and others, get down to the reality. What is very good news at the moment, gone completely missing, is that Crawford Faulkner, who negotiated for New Zealand the China and American trade deals.
He hasn't done much here since he got the job.
He hasn't been allowed to.
Well,
no, he hasn't.
He was hired to do the job,
no,
and he's got nothing to show for it.
You can't do a
far.
trade deal until we're outside. So Crawford Faulkner's talents have been wasted. Now, he's coming in, and the other person who's really interesting is Julian Braithwaite, who's been at the WTO. He's a man with a Foreign Office background. I think there ought to be more of people like him.
And a number 10 background.
Well, but joining the team. And my point is, it gives it more breadth and a greater sense of how they negotiate what they say. So I think that's gone missing for the most part. I think that's really an important change the Prime Minister's taken on. I recommended that weeks ago.
It's been reported in The Sun. I'm not sure whether it's been confirmed yet.
Yeah, it is. I understand that to be the case. And I think it's a wholly positive move. It shows the Prime Minister is looking for extra talent to find ways. Braithwaite understands how the EU works as well, really well. And I think this is really important. So I'm not being over the top about it. I simply say all of these, as they say, ducks are beginning to come into a row. We're beginning to understand what we want. And the EU does need to know, what do you want? And then we start the negotiation.
Okay, what about Parliament voting to rule out no deal? I mean, can people breathe a sigh of relief and say that's not going to happen?
No, because it's a motion, and therefore, as you know and I know, it's not binding, it's an indication.
The other thing was the motion as well.
I know, but that's about the negotiations you're going to have and take part, and it has to come back and get that voted, and there's a bill that has to follow that too. But the motion is an indication that, by and large, the Parliament is split. There was an 8-vote majority, but they say they don't want to go to no deal, and the answer is, I don't want to go to no deal.
Exactly.
I want a negotiated deal. So we have to get a negotiated deal if we can. Having said that, though, they all voted originally, quite rightly, Article 50 and the bill itself that says, in the event of whatever, we leave on March 29th. And what was very interesting about yesterday's vote, and these were very serious legislative votes, the 2 votes that were voted down were the delay by Yvette Cooper. That was significantly voted down, and so was the Dominic Grieve vote, which are both legislation. They would have been very, very directed and damaging.
But, I mean, the reality, though, is whatever is eventually decided or not decided, we're not going to have crossed all the I's, dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's to leave on March the 29th, are we? Because just the amount of legislation you've referred to there is not going to get through.
Well, there is only one bill that needs to get through. This idea there are 6 bills that have to go through. They don't have to go through before March 29th. Most of them, like the trade bill, can go through after March 29th because they don't actually affect the reality. The bill that has to go through before March 29th is the departure bill. And that point is, you'll get that through. I have been in parliaments, frankly, that have sat round the clock. You know, we have a pretty easy time right now compared to what it was when I first came in, where you never left before 10 o'clock. You'll remember this. We often, at Maastricht, we went round the clock for 2 days. If you have to get stuff through Parliament, there is more time. And if they want to get rid of the February thing, I'm sorry to those who've booked holidays, it doesn't happen. When we have to get legislation through, I am of the view, and I've been there long enough, and many of my colleagues will tell us, during the Thatcher days, they would never get through that until 2 o'clock in the morning. You do what you have to do. We're here to deliver, and nobody out there is going to breathe a moan, oh, those poor parliamentarians. Our job is to deliver legislation.
Okay. Iain Duncan Smith, thank you very much indeed.